Welcome to another coal painting table tutorial. Today we're taking a look at the Nian beast by Dragon Trapper's Lodge. So I've been looking at doing a lot of painting on 3D printed models that are kind of atypical, so this is where this is coming from. This is the concept art that I was looking at when I was trying to figure out how I should go about painting this monster. This is filmed on my phone, so we'll see if this is any good. This is the base model just primed with Vallejo Gray Primer. The texture on the base was added with AKA Interactive Terrain's Muddy Ground. We're going to start off with a nice all-over prime base coat of Arbuckle's Brown by Fantasy Games. I'm not sure if the mane was supposed to be necessarily on fire, but it is definitely a brighter red or orange. We're going to shift that up with more Skill 75 Fantasy Games Blood Feast Crimson. I'm not going to use the airbrush a whole bunch in this tutorial, but we're using it right now just to help block out some colors. This is a bit of an experiment. I've recently had a few things click in my head as I've been painting that we're going to show off in some of the videos I have coming up. And who knows, we might actually get more than a month's worth of videos actually done and keep it going for the rest of 2021. The concept art for this mini had a different color for the underbelly of the beast. So I just mixed together some of that same Arbuckle's Brown with a color that I'm going to use a fair bit in this one called Leander's Gray. Nice and thinned out, and we're just slapping it all over as we're going across just to get the underbelly change of what its fur would be. One of the things that you guys are going to see different in this video is that I will cut away a fair bit. Once you guys see the general process happening, I'm going to turn off the phone, essentially, come back to it once the process has been completed, so you guys can see the beginning and end of each step. If you like it, let me know. If you don't like it, also let me know. Now, I know that we used the Arbuckle's Brown as an overall base coat to work off of for this guy. It might not have been the right step. I realized that the concept art had it be a lot more grayish than it was brown. So right here I'm mixing in Holder Blue and Arbuckle's Brown to create a different coat color for the fur to match the concept art a little bit more. Now, dozen of one, like 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You guys could have easily started at this step, but I just felt like working off the brown to begin with was an easier way to start building up the colors, especially since hair is pretty translucent. These coats aren't really that thick, so you're going to see a lot of color showing through as we're working here. So at this point I wanted to get a bit of a transition between the color of the mane to the color of the body. So whatever you're painting the main color as, if you're doing this kit or doing something else that has a big shaggy mane like a Gorgon or like from GW or anything really, I'm just feathering out the color just that I used on the mane into the body. It's pretty thin, but I'm drawing a lot of small, sharp, thin lines. I realize I'm off camera right now and I apologize for that, but that's the easiest way that I could see it. The finishes of these are a little bit different than the normal paints that I use as well. I'm trying a new lighting setup, so if it's harder to see things, let me know. I'm just trying to get the new system working really well. And this is just a quick once-over of what it looks like once everything's been faded in and feathered in across the back and at the elbows and points like that. Alright, I'm going to talk as this one goes through a couple different clips. One of the things that I wanted to experiment on this piece was the addition of texture where there is no texture. I've been seeing a lot of really cool tutorials in some other channels like Cult of Paint and Vince Venturella about doing things like this. So what we're doing is just drawing a lot of thin, sharp lines in places where I wanted the highlights to be for the fur. We're going to do this highlight by taking that same fur base, which was Arbuckles and Holder Blue, and adding in a little bit of Leander's Gray. So there's kind of two things just to keep in mind here. The first highlight wasn't broader brush strokes, it was simply a darker color but still many small brush strokes. I'm doing the same thing along the side of the body here. Now that's kind of the neat thing, that if we start thinking about miniatures in terms of volumes instead of traditional like line highlighting, the top part of this model isn't going to be the brightest, it's going to be at the side where your light's going to catch, and that's what you're seeing now that we switched clips. Now the highlights are just going to continually progress, a little bit more Leander's Gray going into that mix, and I'm going to stop eventually once I figure it's bright enough. Okay, and this is going to be our last highlight for the fur, drawing all those many thin lines with just pure Leander's Gray. And the fun just point to make here is that when I finished this part of the project, I really didn't like the way that this model looked. However, I've done a lot of things like this in which I've experimented and didn't like things as they were going along, and I know that I should probably start working on a different part of the model to see it start to get more complete, and usually I decide to make a couple tweaks later that you'll see that just kind of bring it back together. The big thing here is I found the lines very stark, and I did probably too much of a jump here at the end to the gray. Now this is just a little like, hey, I'm going to do a little test here. I did it on one side, but we're going to go do it on the other side, just to show you how I did this. We're going to start off with Blood Feast Crimson, and we are going to start filling out some of that color. Now the interesting thing here, and this is more color theory just for you guys to remember, reds are naturally translucent, hair is naturally translucent as well, like it's really easy to see through it, so I'm working just with thin colors as we're going across. Notice that I'm not trying to go the length of the mane of the fur. I'm trying to stick with the ridge, I guess the outward fold, where like you'd see like the top part of a bell graph if you're going to look at this hair or this fur in this way. Alright, now that's starting to define a little bit more of what the volumes of this would be. And when I say volumes, I mean like the points that are like away from the model versus things that are deep. Like this hair is basically a half cylinder or a half pipe. So if you're looking like down the handle of your paintbrush, as an example, look at the way that the light's reflecting off of the top part of the paintbrush versus the sides. And that's what we're trying to, or at least what I'm trying to do is build out here. So I mixed together Pale Crimson with a Blood Feast just to start lightening it up a little bit. And again, you guys can use whatever next step you want to for your highlight colors. I just happened to get some of these paints in, and I got really excited to use them, and that's what's going on here. Okay, the next highlight is going to be just straight blood, sorry, not blood, Pale Crimson. Again, focusing just tighter highlights as we're going here. And the neat thing is that the texture that we were using in terms of drawing the small lines along the side of the body applies to this as well. Now, they won't be as easy to see just because red's more translucent, but as we kick in more and more highlights, the more layers and lines that we're drawing in, the more it'll look like fur. Even in places where we have like hair and fur texture obviously sculpted onto the model, we can keep on going with this just to make it look better and make it look cooler. So there's a lot of colors that we can mix into red to make it brighter. Orange is one of the options that we have. Now, the reason that I went with orange here as opposed to something like Sunny Skin Tone or Ivory or Ice Yellow or even something like Glacier Blue is that the concept art had it look almost fiery. So I'm working with that in mind. Now, obviously fire is painted the inverted way that we're doing here. It'd be brighter in the deepest recesses as opposed to the higher points. But bringing in the orange now, especially Mars orange, is a little bit more opaque. And as we're drawing in the lines, I'm going to be able to start seeing them a little bit more, and they're not going to be as unnoticeable as the previous layers were. Fun side note is, like, as you guys see me working around here, when I flip it upside down, you can kind of see what I mean by it being stark. The lines just kind of hit that brown and blue mix as it gets to the underbelly, and that's the part that I didn't like. And again, we're still going to fix that later as we go back into it. Right on. So I've hit a couple of different colors here. I just used Despair Green in the base because it helps me look at the way the colors are layering out. Fun point here is that we're going to use that Blood Feast Crimson that we used on the main, thinned out a huge amount, and actually use it as glazes to help bring down that starkness. So you can see it working into the underbelly, but then also working up into all those lines that we drew, especially along the side that I thought was too stark. I don't know why I thought that the crimson would work really well here, but it's such a strong color for the top of the fur, or sorry, for the top of the mane. I thought, why not, and give it a go, and I ended up really liking the end effect. But yeah, the glaze really helped bring it all out here. I was going to take a couple coats here, and we're going to do that off camera, but we're going to use AK Interactive Ice Yellow to hit those antlers and all the horn protrusions that are coming off of this beast. So yeah, like I was saying, it did take quite a few coats to get those antlers base coated. At least with the ice yellow. I'm sure if you had something like GW's Wraithbone or Grayseer, or any of those base colors, it would have worked out just as well. I just didn't have those ones handy. And I wanted a cool color here, because basically antlers are cool, the mane is warm, the body's cool. It kind of gives a bit of balance as we're going back and forth. The first color shifts here that I'm trying to work into with the antlers is closer towards the end and the points, is using Vallejo Model Air Sand. It's a beigeish color. The fun side out is, like, anytime that you're using an airbrush, if you're very carefully dry brushing, you can get incredibly similar effects. This is just a quick what it looks like after the sand's done. Now this is the fun part about, like, working on horns. Going the inverted from, instead of it being like dark at the base and then light as it goes outward, I really like to switch that one around. It makes it look a little bit more natural. So we're using Vallejo Model Air's Mahogany. It's just a red brown, like, I'm sure the old GW Dark Flesh or whatever the equivalent, like Rhinoxide, would work fine here as well. Again, just using the airbrush, working my way from the towards the tip, depending on the angle that we're trying to move around here. I go off camera to do a little bit of it, but like with the front elbow horns, there actually is a gap in the sculpt, so I just slide a sheet of wax paper in between as like a quick and easy mask off, just so I can get the transitions happening there as well. And here's what it looks like with the mahogany all done. Alright, and then just to put like a final little piece on it, I thinned out a whole bunch of Vallejo Model Color Black, and then just hitting the tips with it. It might go a little bit past into some of the recesses and cracks that are sculpted in. And that's the really nice thing about this sculpt, is that there is a lot of lines that we're going to leverage in a little bit using something I actually hadn't used before this project. So that's okay. But yeah, that's what's going along here. So just making sure that all those tips are getting caught with a nice dark final transition. You could use like a dark brown here too. I just find that black is a nice final shift. Almost like the tip of a flame. Alright, now here's one of the cool, fun, new things that I got while I was waiting for all these other Scale 75 paints to show up, is that I finally got myself a bottle of Inktense wood. I've been really excited about this. It is, well, an ink that's meant for using wood, but I really want to use it on these antlers as well. Inks flow really well, guys, so just remember, careful control, don't overload your brush, don't treat it like a wash either. Just selective control where you want things going. I go with 2 coats of this stuff in the end that you will see once we get going along. It also takes a long time to dry, so I end up doing the base while this is drying in between layers. I don't film the base. I'm going to do some basing videos, at least I plan to, if my buddy Steve gets his way in the next little while. So in the next little frame, you're going to see 2 layers of the Inktense wood, as well as the base all wrapped up. I kind of lied, the base isn't all wrapped up here yet. There still needs to be some pigments put down, I think a little bit more if I remember correctly. But this is what we're taking a look at. With this all done, the last thing we need to do is finish off his face. Okay, so in the concept art, his face is white-ish, give or take. So we're basing just the whole face and muzzle with reddish gray. One thing you guys might notice is that like the finish has changed as we're going between these different pieces in different steps. I do a lot of varnish coats using AK Interactive, usually ultra matte varnish, as we're going across, unless I need something that allows paint to act more smooth on it, like putting on decals or transfers or certain washes in which I'd use a gloss, but I find that it's easier for my eyes to see once everything's the same finish, and I love AK Interactive's Ultra Matte Varnish. The next color we're going to use is AK Interactive Warm Gray. I found like a nice little triad there in which it's reddish gray, warm gray, deck tan, and then ivory is a final highlight. So that's literally what we're going to see ourselves go through. It's not so much present here because it's just looking at this guy's face, but working through volumes and treating each part as individual shapes and 3D objects is kind of the epiphany that I really had lately. I've been watching, again, a lot of different tutorials, a lot of different videos. Trevarian's channel and then Vince's channel and then Cult of Paints are the ones that are really sticking in my mind a lot, that have been changing how I've been doing things. So in this case, I'm trying to look at all the different shapes that his face makes up and highlighting the points in which light would hit, rather than, say what I would do in the past, is just work progressively more vertically with the airbrush and then use washes or glazes just to change things around. It was an eye-opener for me, so hopefully it's helping you guys out too. The next videos coming up won't be quite as texture-filled, but a little bit more volume-based. Here I'm just going to start blacking out the mouth, eyes, and nose, just to go in and be able to do the teeth and everything else. Unfortunately, once we get into everything else, the way that I need to hold the model in order to see it, it's going to look a little bit weird in these next frames. Okay, and then the last things we're going to do is, originally I was grabbing the ivory to do the like teeth and eyes, but I realized that I wanted to bring up an extra step of highlights for the face, so we're going to actually use that as a maximum highlight here as well. You could use other tones or other colors if you wanted to for like the eyes or mouth. Some folks have been asking like, why aren't my teeth more yellow? I'm like, it's art, I think. I don't know, I look at my dog's teeth, and she chews on bones a lot, and I can imagine this guy chews on bones a lot. She doesn't really have a lot of plaque or tartar buildup, so there's that. So if you guys have a problem with me painting really white teeth, blame my dog, because she has really white teeth. Alright, here's a quick little video turnaround of what he looks like, and then we're going to look at some pictures. Alright, so once again guys, here is the concept art that we were working off of when we started the project, and these are our finished shots. Now, looking for the concept art, some changes that I made was antler changes, and then just adding the texture of the body. I think it's pretty close to what the artist had interpreted. I could have gone maybe a little bit more jade for the base. Looking at it now, I'm not necessarily sold on the texture and the sand around the rest of the base. It could be cooler, it could be different, but whatever. It's done now, and it's all finished up. So, there we go. If you thought the tutorial and walkthrough of this project was cool, please give it a like or a share. One of the things I want to be doing more is just painting things that I want. It's not to be selfish, but I find that if I'm just painting kits for the sake of painting kits, especially on a tutorial, it's not quite as motivating for me. So looking at the ability to paint weird things like this that not maybe everyone has seen or had a chance to look at, gets me more enthusiastic about doing tutorials. I know the joke was the last time I posted a video, somebody was like, oh hey, it's been 2 weeks and he's never going to post a video again. Well, commissions kind of picked up and work was crazy for quite a long time, but I've recently changed jobs and I have more time to do things like this. So again, if you guys liked it, hit that like button, comment, share, subscribe about things that you may want to see and what I could potentially pull out of the woodworks of weird minis of paint. But thanks a lot guys, and have a great day.